I recall a stat, and I don't remember the exact percentage. I just know it's at least 50% of millennials and probably Gen Z at this point as well. They're really looking for an organization that's going to help them in their career development. They want an organization that's going to invest in them to help them grow professionally. And that is a key to retention, which you brought up.
In many organizations, it's a missed opportunity because, again, you go back to the ping pong tables and the pizza on Fridays, and that's not sticky. It's not going to keep people there because it's not a real key differentiator. The key differentiator is empowerment of me as an individual, as a person.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Small Talk Window podcast, where we have 10-ish minutes to dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation related to the world of work. And for today, we ask, why? Why are you switching your learning solution or deploying one for the first time? To explain why, you must understand your why. My guest for this episode is Barry Richman, a learning ecosystems expert. In his most recent former life, he played a leading role in managing the learning ecosystem for Dunkin Brands, so he knows a thing or two about these things. Welcome, Barry.
Brent, how you doing today?
Oh, doing great. Yeah, and I know we've both been waiting with bated breath to do this recording for a while now.
Yes.
It's, it's fantastic to be here finally. Maybe you could just share with our audience just a little bit about your background and sort of the authority and expertise you bring to this conversation.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope I do. I have the gray hairs, so that's always a good sign, right?
Yes.
But I've spent the past 20 plus years in the learning business. And I think somewhat uniquely, prior to that, I spent a lot of time in technology. I was proud to say, the leading edge of the internet. I worked for AT&T Business Systems when the internet just became a thing in the 90s. So it goes back a bit. I had some technical background. I spent a lot of years in sales and business development. And then as I worked into the learning and training business, I started becoming really aware of all the moving parts of training, from delivery to content and ultimately to the technologies involved. And over the last 10 plus years, I've really been focused on that technology. And it's fascinating to me because in learning, the way I feel about it is, if you're gonna put a learning program and a learning system together, the spine of it has to be the way it's delivered and the technology that links it all together. And we're going to talk about the why learning, why is that important to an organization? And I really feel like the great majority of it is the way in which the technology acts together with the business needs. So technology, business, meeting in the middle to really fuel how learning changes an organization.
Oh, yeah. Very well put. Very well put. So let's talk a little bit more about this why. Why do we need to know the why? We were talking a while back, and it was this idea that, sometimes organizations, there's an inclination, right, to do learning. And that's a great inclination to have. It comes from a good place, like we said earlier, but there's sort of an impulse to just kind of do it, or maybe you have something in place and it's not technology wise, it's not doing what you want it to do, and sort of the impulse. And we see this in all sorts of areas of HCM and the enterprise technology, where there's an impulse to do a change where there might be something else going on. Maybe you can dig into that a little bit for us.
Sure. I think it's great. A great discussion point, because when I engage with clients, many times that's the first thing I hear. It's not working. It's not doing what we needed to do. It's broken. System's broken. And that's, when I listen to that, when I hear that and I kind of examine it a bit and probe a little bit further, What I find in most instances is a real lack of an anchoring why. Like, all right, so let me start out. The first question I would ask a prospective client: why do you need learning in your organization? And then shut up, which is a hard thing for me to do. But
Me too.
what I want to do, most of us, right? What I want to do is call out some of those reasons why. And regrettably, unfortunately, most of the things you hear are we have to be able to track compliance training. We have to be able to know who took what and who didn't take what. It tends to be very tactical. And then you start to move the conversation towards what are the goals of the business? What's the organization striving to do? And how do you link the organization and the organizational goals to what you just told me about what you want the learning system to do? And most of the time, there's this huge gap in between the functionality of the system and what the business is trying to do. For example, you hear, we want to be able to retain our people. It's harder to hire than it is to retain, which is obvious, right? So what are you doing to retain your people? And then they go through a whole litany of things. Well, we got ping pong tables. We give you free pizza on a Friday and blah, blah, blah. It's a culture thing. But, if I'm an employee, most people that are employees want to feel empowered. They want to feel like their employer is differentiated in the way that they treat that individual and help them to grow in their role. So growing in the role has to do more with the why. Why do you need learning, and how is learning connected to performance, appraisal, succession, promotion, retention? So it builds on it. Learning is an integral layer to all of that, but most organizations don't see those things as connected. And that's the trouble, and that's the thing you want to focus on, because otherwise it's a tactical tool. It's for a box check. You're checking boxes, and nobody wants to do that.
I myself am holding back from talking right now because you're bringing up so many good points, and you're bringing so many thoughts to my mind. But just a couple of things to sort of parlay off that. One is,
raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Tonight on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, series premiere tonight on NBC.
That we're seeing this in the bleeding edge of the market. We're seeing this marching toward learning no longer being approached as a silo, right? It's more of it threads through all of talent management, which we're not even calling really talent management anymore. We're calling it talent intelligence or workforce agility, these sorts of things, right? What I hear you describing when people say, oh, we want to know that they're being trained in A, B, and C. We need to track it for compliance, this sort of thing. Compliance and training, still very important to mitigate risk and all this kind of stuff. And that is an argument for looking at learning, at least from a certain angle, as siloed. But otherwise, you're really talking about being integrated and actually helping to sort of elevate the organization, help the organization plan the workforce better, to be like you said, succession planning, these sorts of things. It really leads to a better employee experience. And I recall a stat, and I don't remember the exact percentage. I just know it's at least 50% of millennials, and probably Gen Z at this point as well. They're really looking for an organization that's going to help them in their career development. They want an organization that's going to invest in them to help them grow professionally, and that is a key to retention, which you brought up.
In many organizations, it's a missed opportunity because, again, you go back to the ping pong tables and the pizza on Fridays. And that's not sticky. It's not going to keep people there because it's not a real key differentiator. The key differentiator is empowerment of me as an individual, as a person. And how are you building my skills and making my life better? So you think about skills, you think about connectivity to my role and the goals of the organization and how there is a linear path there. Many times it's disconnected. And there's reasons why, and if we want to pivot maybe to some of the reasons why this is happening, a lot of times you see one of the key questions I ask the clients is, does your technology the technology stack and the decisions made about technology sit in a different place than where content and training is developed? First question. Mm-hmm. So that's a good key question, because if the content and the development of learning exist in a particular spot, maybe it's aligned to HR, maybe it's aligned to operations. It could be different in different organizations. And if the technology that actually drives it is sitting in IT, which it very often is, there's going to be a disconnect. So why am I building this content and how are we delivering it? And again, so much of the why has to do with validation. Validation comes from connecting the metrics that come out of a learning system to the key performance indicators and the OKRs for individuals and the company, and just the overall ROI of why would you take that why would you want to consume that content, and how is it changing the shape of your skills and building that career for you. And most of the time those whys aren't present. They're not there because many times, because of the way the systems are administrated or they're governed, leads to that disconnection.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of legacy I would say legacy thinking around where learning should sit, and that sort of stuff that's maybe holding organizations back. And maybe another sort of an alternative title for this podcast episode could have been, learning how to get better at learning to your organization. In the couple of minutes that we have left, I do want to make sure that we can get to a little bit to administration and governance, because that's a big piece of the puzzle too.
Right. Good questions. And what I find, again, when I'm working with clients is unpeeling issues and the reasons why. Most of the time, a company is saying, well, we just want to change our LMS and we want you to help us do that. Find a new system and help us implement a new system. And I say, well, I'm happy to do that and help you with that. But what if I could tell you that it's not going to change anything? You could go through and do all that, and in 5 or 6 months, you're going to be back in the same soup you're in now. Would that change your point of view? I don't know that that's true, but most of the time, you need to address other issues before you get to changing the technology behind it. And that goes to administration and often in cases, lack of governance. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with clients and they say, well, the system's broken. We have a full list of all the reasons, of all the things we've complained about with the system. And they'll give me a spreadsheet over a course of years. They've been very diligent to maintain reasons why. And for the most part, every one of those reasons is an internal administrative issue. You don't understand the system. You are trying to do something with the system that is against the way in which the system was created. So, many times that's an indicator that you either have an issue with administration or you selected a system that doesn't do the things you need it to do. In the case of either centralizing, decentralizing, building, in larger organizations, there's this balance of centralizing particular types of administrative functions versus decentralizing them based on the different business units and how they operate. So you need to dive into that a little bit. And then governance, which you mentioned. Governance is a set of rules about how things are done in a system. And again, most of the problems with administration happens because there's not a rule book. So everything is done as a one-off. So there's no establish rules for how things are done. Learning and the technology is an engine. It's an engine just like an HRIS system is. So you need to have rules and governance, and most of the time organizations lack that, and that's a big problem too.
Yeah, there's a lot to unravel at many organizations in relation to learning. And one thing that we didn't get to today, which I maybe will have you back, Barry, is content strategy and how that fits into the equation. Yeah, absolutely. But thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast.
Very happy to do so, Brent.